Alright, in this video we're going to look at API requests, so looking at getting data from another system to use within our own programs. So to start with, simple Kivy interface template. You can see we've got a single screen, and on that screen we've got a label, just the title, a button to action the request for data, and then a box layout for us to output the data that we want to display. So we'll get straight into the requesting data. So we're going to use a couple of Python libraries to help us with this. The first one is the request library, which basically allows us to format the request for data, and the JSON library. So this allows us to take the results from the request and format them into a JSON format, which we can then iterate through, as it basically creates it like a list of dictionaries. So the request itself is pretty straightforward. So in our getData method, we're going to get a variable called results. And from the requests library, we're going to use the get method to get the data. So the website that we're going to request data from is called jsonplaceholder.typicode.com. And so you won't be too surprised to note that this website basically provides JSON placeholder data. So perfect for this sort of activity that we're doing. So so that one line will basically request the data from it. And if we save and we run our Python file, so you can see we've got our interface, get data. Nothing really happens at the moment, although you might notice in the terminal that we start a new connection, and we have a bit of information here, but the important bit is you'll see this 200. So the 200 is the response code, which essentially means that the request has been successful. So even though we can't see the results yet, we have them there from that request. So I guess the exception to this is if you are on the Education Queensland network, you're probably getting a different message right now if you're running it. That's because we need to include the proxy details. So to do this, we'll set up the proxy. So the proxy details we need to give it are in the form of a dictionary. So we put the request type, so HTTP. So particularly this one is a HTTP request. And the proxy details are proxy2.eq.edu.au:80, so for port 80. You can add multiple types as well. So if you wanted to also set this up for HTTPS requests, it's the same address, but just for that different type of request. As a general rule though, the HTTPS requests do involve you having to talk to your IT department about getting that website unblocked in order to be used. The HTTP one should be okay, which is why we're using it. So then to actually use that proxy in here, we do need to incorporate a library, an object. So from, I've completely forgotten where it is. Where's me requests? That's it. Sorry, requests.auth. So from the authorization library, we're going to import the HTTP proxy authorization. So this allows us to put in our username and password along with these proxies. So the full request, I'm just going to remove the Kivy file now that we've got that set up, because this will stretch this out a bit. So we pass in some parameters of proxies, which is equal to our proxy dictionary that we've set up, and then auth for authorization equals HTTP proxy auth. Alright, and in the brackets you put your username and your password. So, username you probably can get away with hard coding. Password, you may not want to do that. So there is a couple of options around that. The first one is you could save these details in another file, import it in, so when you're demonstrating your prototype, it doesn't clearly display your username and password in there. The other option is you can use a method called getPass. So we have to import it. And so basically what getPass does is it asks for your password in the terminal. So if I run this, I've got to close the other one. So if I run this, when I get data, you can see it prompts me for my password. So I'll just type something in. Right, and it has a little meltdown, but that's because I'm not actually on the Education Queensland network. So this is probably closer to the message you would have seen without the proxy details. But yeah, just wanted to demonstrate that for the video on how to incorporate that. So I'm just going to comment out the proxy and leave the request. I'll just double check that's working. So get data, code 200, happy days. So now we've got our API results. We want to be able to parse through them. So if I create a variable just called JSON data, we can take those results and simply run the JSON method. And so we can see what we're working with. We will print out said JSON data. So I'll kill the terminal, rerun it, and get data, and you can see we've printed out a whole heap of lorem ipsum data from the JSON placeholder website. So if you do sort of dig into it, you can see that there's a list of dictionaries. All right, and for each one it gives you a user ID. So user ID is set to 1 for all of these because it's just the default user. ID of 1, so that refers to the elements, ID of 2, so on. So I guess if you wanted to use the ID to target a specific piece, you could. You can also just use the list element. So ID of 1 would actually be element 0 because it's the first item in the list, so on and so forth. So you got the title, the body, which is a bit more text to go after the title, and then that's the end of each item in the list. So if we wanted to output the first title, we could just say JSON data. Within that, we could say element 0 for the first element, and then within that dictionary, we can select the title. So I might just change this up to say print output. Alright, so if we cancel the old one and run it again, so now when I run it, instead of getting all the data, you can see I just get a title that was from the first element in that list. If we wanted to get multiple bits of information, similar to what we've done before, we can loop through. So for I in range 10, so we just change the element from 0 to I, so it'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. And if I put that in there, it should then print 10 titles for us. So run it again, so you can see we've got a list of 10 titles there. Some of them go over a couple of lines, but that's okay. Actually, no, they're all one line. I just can't count. So 10 titles, output. So I guess then the challenge is how do we put it into our output? We have done this before, so nothing particularly new. So what we would do is we'll just change this up slightly. So the output is now attached to the API output by using self.ids. So I will have to open up the Kv file again. So API output, so basically saying this is now the output, and then we would say output dot add widget. Sorry, that's not what I wanted to type. Add widget, and then we need to add a label widget with text equal to a stringed version of that title. So I think I need 3 brackets to close. I also need to import the label. So from kivy.uix.label, import the label. I don't need to print that output anymore either. So this should just add it to the list, and we should end up with a series of titles in our output. So let's try get data, and so you can see that fits in there. So I guess as well we could go in and just tweak this a little bit with things like a size hint, 5.1. I know I don't encourage copy and paste, but just to get this done quickly, I'm going to do that. So that'll give you a bit more room for all of your data. So yeah, so that's a simple API request. I guess a lot of APIs do use additional authentication strategies to stop people from basically overloading the servers. There is a video in the QLearn course that goes through an old example that we used to do for the Marvel API, which is now been no longer supported. So it's the same concept as a simple one. A couple of authentication things that you need to consider, but it works the same way in terms of the actual request and then parsing it with JSON. So like I said, short, sharp one, just going through API requests.